Hi everyone, welcome into another episode of Sun Times Game Week. We are back in the studio with a lot of playoff action to discuss. First, we've got to thank our content partner, ABC, for sharing this on their Facebook page. Can't talk today. Thanks guys for sharing this. Thank you all for tuning in. Send us your questions throughout the show. First up, as we always get to, is our news of the day. What is on the agenda? We've got some basketball to talk about.
Not a lot of actual news, right? But things happening. Girls basketball starts today. Boys basketball is next week, so we are officially into the winter season. How exciting! I think kind of a newsy thing we'll mention. I wrote about it in the paper today and online. The Catholic League, the new Super Catholic League of the Chicago Catholic League and East Suburban Catholic League combined, just had a heck of a quarterfinal. They've got 8 teams still remaining in the state playoffs. We could have almost an all Catholic League Saturday, which a lot of people joke that the IHSA hates that and blah, blah, blah. I don't think the IHSA cares too much if a lot of people show up, which it would if it was all those games. So that was kind of interesting, a little newsy item. And then the other big news, No Shot Clock, the high school basketball podcast that Joe Hendrickson and I do, is back. Week later than maybe we should have been, but we are back and we made up for it with a really long episode. You can listen to that online now. I know I teased last week at the end of the show that maybe we'd release the Basketball Super 25 on game week. That's not happening. Instead, if you want it, you're going to have to go to No Shot Clock. We break all the top 25 teams down in depth, so you can catch that there. And let's go right into the other big news, signing day. Wednesday, the basketball players can sign their national letters of intent. Kind of go down the list here quickly. We can do that because it's not very long, which is sad to a lot of us. There are 16 players expected to sign, which has kind of become the new normal. I was looking it up before the show. Last year we had 14, 18 in 2016, 15 in 2015. What
was the craziest year you remember covering?
Oh, regularly we used to get 30. We have had 60 before. The last time it was close to what we used to consider normal was 2014 when we had 24. But the other thing is, that year we had 10 high majors. This year,
we don't.
I'm not sure if you want to argue about it. Loyola made the Final Four, but I don't think you can really call them a high major.
Right.
You could kind of say we have maybe none this year.
What's the reason for that?
Nobody really knows. We feel like we're in this valley, natural valley, but it keeps going
down
now.
Right.
Yeah, and the population loss has been one thing. That's talked about a lot in the news. There's less kids in the city. There's less kids in the suburbs. Illinois is losing population. We've lost some high-profile players to prep schools, but it's just drastic. And looking at this group of kids, you don't want to rip kids or anything, but it's just not up to the level that we were used to, for 40 years.
Do you think that's because everyone else is getting better? And Chicago is staying the same, or is Chicago truly getting worse?
Yeah, it's interesting because Chicago, whenever you hear people talk about Chicago basketball, they're always in the same conversation as LA, New York, on the East Coast, and I don't know, can we still be in that same category?
It's getting bad. We haven't had a McDonald's All-American in, it's going to be 3 years now.
Right.
And that had never happened before,
right.
Not once. And now we're on a 3-year streak.
But they moved to Chicago and it cursed Chicago.
Yeah, that's how bad it is. So it's bad out there. I'm sure there's a lot of factors, a lot of reasons. There are some kids that aren't signing tomorrow that could wind up being high major, which would help the list. It definitely helped last year. Last year, signing day, I was whining in a similar fashion. And we wound up having some players emerge during the season, like Terrence Shannon, who's going to go high major. So it looked a lot better by the end. Hopefully that happens this year. But let's run through it here quick. Kieran Brayboy from New Trier is going to Harvard. He's a big man. Trey Kelvin from St. Viator is signing with Wright State. We talked to Fred Cleveland from Leo, North Carolina A&T. And then a player I think could have maybe gone high major if college coaches were a little smarter, and I think they might regret this one, but Tyler Cochran from Bolingbrook. He is he's a man. He is a strong beast of a player, and he was just excellent last season as a junior. I can't imagine how good he's going to be this year. He's kind of an under-the-radar player of the year contender, and he's signed with Northern Illinois. I've never used the phrase under-the-radar player of the year contender, and he's going to Northern Illinois.
That's
before.
How Northern gets into the Sweet 16.
Yeah, so that could be great for them. Keenan Cole, a kid from Streamwood, big kid, 6'7", wing. He's also going to Northern Illinois. Perry Cowan is an interesting case. He's a DePaul prep guard. He could have gone high major as well, but instead he decided to go academics. He's going to Brown. Ray J. Dennis from Oswego East is going to Boise State, which is one of the stranger commitments we've had around here. We don't get a lot of kids going to Boise. Nate Ferguson from Lamont to Drake. DeJuan Gordon, late bloomer out of Curie, is going to Kansas State. That at this point is probably
the biggest.
Yeah, the biggest. Jeremiah Hernandez from St. Viator, who's just a smart, interesting player, is going to Kent State. He's one of those, I think if he maybe would have played the season out, he also could have wound up somewhere a little bigger. Marquise Jacobs from Uplift. We've talked a lot about him. He's going to DePaul, signing on Wednesday. I did talk to him today. He's signing on Wednesday. I know there's been a lot of debate about that. We've talked a little bit about it on the show, but it sounds like that's definitely happening Wednesday. So DePaul fans will be very happy when that
excited,
that
DePaul.
actually happens.
Don't get excited for Wednesday.
Lance Jones from Evanston, Southern Illinois. Marquise Kennedy from Brother Rice going to Loyola. We've talked about him before. Then another interesting player, Tayon Neal from Providence St. Mel. He's 6'9", 6'10", strong. You can see the potential there. It hasn't quite happened in high school yet, but I had blue blood college assistant coaches calling me about him when he was a freshman and sophomore because they got one look at him and were like, oh my goodness. UIC got him. So that's going to be interesting for them. He can be really effective there, and a player that, when he's a junior and senior, could be a big difference maker if he sticks at UIC. Evan Taylor from Glenbard West is signing with Southern Illinois. Alex Timmerman, a big man from Crystal Lake Central. Bucknell. Tom Welch, who we've talked about and featured from Naperville North, signing with Loyola. And the final one, Joseph Yasufu, another Bolingbrook guard, heading to Drake. So that's the list there. You know, there wasn't a single Big Ten school, which...
so wild.
Isn't it weird? I mean, there have been times when we've had, double-digit Big Ten kids almost. So it's an interesting class. The big names still yet to sign. Chris Payton from Bloomington, who at one point, he was an Illinois State commit at one point, decommitted. Illinois is involved with him and a lot of other schools, so he'll be high major. Bryant Brown from Waukegan. He's an excellent high school basketball player, had a rough spring and summer, it sounds like. So the colleges have kind of gone away. I think he's going to be the kid we're talking about in March, that there's going to be big schools after. Tujate Williams, 6'8", freak athlete, late bloomer at Orr. He's going to wind up somewhere. And then Simeon's backcourt has not committed. Antonio Reeves is a senior that just transferred back to the city. He was in Arizona last year. He's an excellent shooter, 6'5" kid. And Kawan Clemens, who's a star. And, I'm interested. I didn't hear a lot about what happened with his spring and summer, but I'm a little bit surprised that he hasn't found a spot yet. And I think he's going to have a big year. So that's kind of the look of it. Hopefully there'll be some other kids, coming out, but signing day is Wednesday. Things have gone really well for Loyola. We got 2 kids. That's going to be good. Things have gone really well for DePaul with Marquise Jacobs. But if you notice, there's a name we haven't mentioned yet. And they're always the story of signing day because they have the big, massive fan base. It's Illinois. Illinois doesn't have any recruits. They have none. Nobody. That's really weird, and it's like a disaster over there.
Well, how is oh my gosh, Chicago fans, forgive me, I'm blanking.
Ayo Dosunmu?
Yes.
Yeah.
How's he doing up there?
He had a great first game. It was Evansville. He was awesome. But I mean, to be a good college basketball program, you don't need one good recruiting class. You need multiple recruiting classes.
Right, you just need recruits.
Yes.
Period.
They don't even have a player. So
how does that even happen?
Yeah, they just keep missing. I think they only have 2 scholarships this time. They were in this scenario at this point last year, and then Ayo committed, and then they filled in with some junior college kids and some transfers. But I mean, this is a Big Ten basketball program, that was in the national title game not that long ago, that is trying to piecemeal together and not even getting local high school kids. So you just got to feel bad for Illinois fans at this point.
Do you think it's the success that's the problem? Like, what's the issue? Why aren't kids?
They don't make the tournament.
That's
it. Nobody wants to play for a school that doesn't make the tournament. And, for whatever reason, Brad Underwood, he did pick up Mark Smith from Belleville West, who was Mr. Basketball 2 years ago. He got Ayo. But it just hasn't gone well. I don't know if things aren't connecting there. It's a bad situation there.
I mean, it seems ridiculous that a school with as big of a program as Illinois, it's a Big Ten school. It shouldn't be this difficult, especially in your own state. Like, these are kids in your own backyard that you're letting fall to, all of these names you just mentioned, and that just to me should not be happening.
Yeah, well, a lot of these kids they didn't want. They never offered. They didn't care,
Right.
and that's been a problem again and
Which
again.
is odd because it's like you don't have any recruits right now. Why wouldn't you want a guy like a number of these players on this list?
Yeah. It's a real problem over there, and I don't really know if there's a solution with the current coaching staff or what's going to happen, but we will keep an eye on it. That should be it for signing day. We will have tons of coverage online, tons of coverage in the newspaper over the next couple days. For me and Joe will have his list of the top 10 programs in the country who did well. I don't think any of the locals are on there, but we'll check it out.
All right, up next on the to-do list, Super 25. Beth, tell us what's the latest? Who's in, who's out? Obviously a few from this weekend's losses.
Yeah, a couple in, couple out. I will say, I think Henry on here said Brother Rice should be number 2. That would mean Batavia would have to drop, and they are not dropping until they lose. So Batavia is still number 2, Henry, and for those of you listening. The top of this looks very much the same. It's Lincoln Way East, Batavia, Brother Rice. Brother Rice did jump up here from number 5, and they take on number 4 at Marist this week. So that's a really intriguing game. We'll talk about that all later. For those of those teams that jumped in, Joliet Catholic is in at number 25. It's not the first time they've been in this season, and it's interesting to see that they're really clicking at this point. I really think they're like Loyola to me right now. I'd be pretty wary if I was going to play them because neither of those teams really should be where they are, and that means something is clicking, and it's clicking really well for Joliet Catholic and for Loyola. Also in is Crete at number 22, another team, always a dark horse contender, playing some really good ball right now. And then at number 21, you're finally in, Notre Dame. You beat somebody in the Super 25. You're finally in. I've been getting tweets all season long saying, why aren't we in? Why aren't we in? The one loss against Marist just didn't. I saw that game. I've seen them live. I just didn't feel like they had it. You guys have got it. You're in the Super 25. So those are the 3 teams that are in. Notable dropouts, Antioch. That's how Notre Dame got in, beating number 25 Antioch. And then Glenbard West. When there's so many teams that are still playing, you got to start to drop out teams that lost out early because they currently are not some of the strongest teams because they're not even getting a chance to play.
Right, of course. All right, quarterfinal review. We have a lot to talk about in some of these games.
We have a lot to talk
Simeon,
about.
Nazareth, Mount Carmel, East St. Louis, and Phillips, Cary Grove were all the games that we were at. Which one do we want to talk about first?
I think it's obvious where we have to start.
All right, Simeon, Nazareth. That was... it was a great game. It came down to the final seconds. Nazareth obviously won 34-27. Beth, I'm going to let you give your take on that game first.
I think Simeon, and as you guys would have noticed in my rankings, Simeon was ranked higher than Nazareth. I think Simeon was the better team, and I think on Saturday, Nazareth was the better team. They put up together a better game. They played more disciplined ball. That's what it really came down to for me. And you can say, yes, too many penalties. If you don't give a ref an excuse to make penalties, to call a penalty, they won't call them. So yes, there might have been a few extra penalties that definitely didn't go Simeon's way. There were a touchdown called back on both sides due to penalties. It certainly didn't feel like the officiating swung the game.
Simeon had 2 touchdowns called back. Alante Brown's run, I believe it was in the 3rd quarter, and then on that final drive, and again, what the ref says goes. That's just how it works.
There's no replay.
Yeah, you can't replay.
Notice how when Simeon loses, everybody starts to talk about the refs and things called back because the entire south side of the city rises up and tries to come up with a reason for Simeon losing. It's like this in basketball too. Because we haven't sat here all year and talked about bad calls and things because Simeon gets worked up.
I would have loved to have seen Simeon win the 3rd state championship for the public league. Who wouldn't want to, right? Like, you gotta feel for them. If you play them, right, you don't want them to. You gotta feel for them. Nazareth is a program that has absolutely had a lot of success. Remember, Simeon could have and should have been in 8A, and Nazareth could and should have been in 6A, and they still came out on top. It shouldn't have been that close of a game if you're Simeon.
Yeah, it was clear last week. We talked about Simeon. I think doubled 20-some penalties against Lincoln Way West. They just had to tighten things up.
You gotta be disciplined.
Yeah, you're not going to win
Nazareth.
No, we talked about that last week, and the penalties was something that we said if they're going to beat Nazareth, that's something that cannot happen. to me, just being in that end zone and watching Alante, reach for the pylon, hit it, stay in bounds. That was a tough call
I mean, it's
to
always
see.
tough to watch a kid like that.
No,
you want to win.
Right, and that wouldn't even have won them the game. They still would have had to either, kick the extra point or go for a 2-point conversion. But it shouldn't have come down to it being that close. But then when it was,
that's when you get
They
all the
led
chatter.
14-0, didn't they, Simeon?
And then
Right.
Nazareth came back with 21 unanswered points.
Yeah,
and
their
we're also
defense
not
just-
talking about
yeah.
Nazareth. Like, I've been talking about Simeon's explosive offense all year. And Alante Brown, absolutely lived up to the hype. He is a fantastic football player. I'm so excited to
Definitely.
see what he does at Michigan
State.
State. And Nazareth said, we'll take your Alante Brown and give you a Michael Love.
Well, they also Diamond Evans came up big. His interception, I think, was the turning point of the game. It sparked Nazareth's offense. J.J. McCarthy and Michael Love came out on that drive after Diamond got that interception and scored quick. And then Michael Love answered again with his kickoff return for a touchdown. So they just had explosive plays that sparked their entire team. And Alante it wasn't just Alante out there either. He had his wide receiver, Rashawn Palmer.
Had a great game.
There were key playmakers for Simeon too. The penalties was just too much. It was tough because without those, it wouldn't have been that close, and I think Simeon would have had that game.
As I said, I think
easy.
Simeon was the better team, but they weren't the better team on Saturday. And I think Michael, after Andy and I were talking to him, summed it up pretty well. When you look at the difference between the discipline of a Nazareth and the discipline of a Simeon, when Simeon has the raw athletes to certainly win that game, Michael, we asked him about a 75-yard punt return, which really that sparked the game after Evans' interception. And he said, I watched enough film to know that Simeon runs straight down the field, and all I had to do was get around one of them. If you're that predictable, if that's all it takes is I know I can take this 75 yards to the house because I've seen you do this every single time all year long.
But also,
that's how you win.
Why was it even being kicked to Michael?
Well, that's another question.
It never should have even touched
Never
his
should
hands.
have.
Michael, oh my gosh, it never should have touched that kid's
Agreed.
hands on a kickoff. But yeah, it was a great game. It was fun to watch. It was heartbreaking in those final seconds to see, the scatter and just the confusion on Simeon's end not to get that final playoff. But, great game by both of them, and Nazareth moves on.
If you want to see the final 15 seconds, I do have it on my Twitter. I wasn't even really sure what was going on, but I was videoing it. So you can check it out at Beth_Long. I believe the Sun-Times Preps retweeted it as well if you want to kind of see what was going on. And it was truly the most disorganized, chaotic thing I've ever seen in a high school football game.
There was a little bit of confusion on that play.
A lot.
Welcome to Simeon Public League football. I remember when they had the 20-minute delay against Phillips when everybody stood around. Yeah, it's nuts.
He's laughing.
Next up, Mount Carmel, East St. Louis. This game, coming into it, I was expecting, I'm not going to lie, I thought East St. Louis was going to win this game looking at the numbers they put up.
I think everyone did.
54 points per game coming into this game, and Mount Carmel's defense shut them down. It was very impressive to see. And I don't want to say we haven't given Mount Carmel credit because I think we've acknowledged what a talented team they are, but this just did it. To hold East St. Louis to just 19 points, I don't know who. I think Mount Carmel's going to be in the state championship game.
We talked about it earlier. I think they have the easiest road to the state title game of any team that we've been talking about. And this is not just coming out and beating East St. Louis. They blanked them 2 years in a row. East St. Louis has got to be let me try to schedule Mount Carmel as many times as I can because I
need revenge.
I want to beat them.
Yeah.
And they just came back out, knocked them out for the second year in a row.
And also worth noting, Mount Carmel's defense didn't just do this against East St. Louis. They are only giving up or only allowing 7.5 points per game and had 4 shutouts this season. So that unit over there and Mount Carmel's quarterback, Brad, I always mess up his name. Primovic. That's what he said too, after the game was that it's their defense that keeps them in the games. And of course, teams always preach that, like, defense wins championships, blah, blah, blah.
I mean, it's the thing that stayed the
But,
same.
yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah.
still Alenti in charge of the
Right,
defense,
right.
and it's the same. These kids grew up, the last
Right.
4 years running that same defense that is apparently just has East St. Louis's number. But yeah, looking at those East St. Louis scores and the quality of competition they'd played.
Right,
and-
they played out of state,
Yeah.
top out of state talent. It's not like they were scheduling weak opponents by any means, scoring 54. Like they played a tough schedule.
And there's not even like the excuses. Like Phillips didn't make excuses, but up in Cary, it was a mess. Grass field, dirt everywhere, people slipping and falling. East St. Louis at Gately was on turf and should have been
Right.
able to speed around nice
Right.
conditions. And Mount Carmel just has their number, I guess.
It is worth noting. I mean, they obviously had to travel a long distance to
Yeah,
get
but
up
they
to the
do that.
game.
They like
Right.
it. That's
So,
their thing.
They
So,
want to.
Yeah, they choose that every
Yeah.
week. So if anything, I think they don't want to play at home. So yeah, it's kudos to Mount Carmel. And I don't know if anybody, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, that was pretty, and they scored.
Right.
29. It's not like
Right,
they've had,
it's not-
because that
right.
was going to be that was my concern with Mount Carmel, because the offense just hasn't looked super effective. But I mean,
They got it started with, I think it was like a 25-yard field goal.